Well, David and Colette, remains a beautiful night here in mid-Michigan, certainly right here where we are at Zender's Snow Fest, and we're now in the ice sculpture tent. The great folks here putting all these ice sculptures together over the last couple of days, creating some beautiful works of art. We're here tonight at the official TV5 ice desk, and I tell you, these guys were very quick to get these things covered today, protecting them from that sunlight that would have otherwise caused them to crack and what they call a spider web out, basically makes them very brittle. And at first glance, you might think, that looks kind of cloudy, but if you look a bit closer, it's amazing what you can actually see here. This wintry scene visible from space thanks to the level of clearing we saw out there today. All this white that you see across the lower peninsula, even cutting into northern Ohio and Indiana, that's all the snow that's sitting on the ground right now. The sky is clear enough that the weather satellites can actually make that out. But that's not all. We could also see very clearly the lake ice on Lake Erie, southern half of Lake Huron, but it wasn't completely cloud-free. We could make out some lake effect clouds jutting in from the still open waters of northern Lake Huron today. Here's a little bit on exactly what sets a fireball meteor apart from, say, the regular shooting star type meteors that we would see during the annual meteor showers. And well, to put it simply, and this one certainly goes without saying, but they cause a very blinding flash and that streak of light through the sky as the rock disintegrates, and ultimately a sonic boom. And it's the result of the meteor that's traveling through space. It's going faster than the speed of sound, and remember, space is actually a frictionless environment, so there's nothing slowing these down until they encounter, say, our atmosphere. And I also want to wish you today, based on the calendar, Happy Pi Day. 3.14, the decimal that we all know fairly well, but I want to play a little game with you here tonight. Those individual mathematical symbols on that pi, they spell out a phrase when you figure out each one individually. Over the course of the next 90 minutes, I want to see if you can figure out what that phrase means, and I'll give you a hint coming up at the top of our 5:30 newscast. But of course, it's the heat that's going to be the big story. So here's what you're in for as of the 7 o'clock hour tonight. Most heat index values in the low to even mid-90s. But take a look, even as we head to midnight, the other side of this is that while it's going to be blistering during the day, really no heat relief at night. This is what it's going to feel like at midnight tonight. Low to mid-80s inland with upper 70s closer to the water and across the thumb. We wake up to basically the same thing tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Low to mid-80s for many of our heat index values, and then they just skyrocket into tomorrow afternoon.
But with each warm-up in weather comes the potential for storms. And Chief Meteorologist Bryan Bachman says the bases are loaded for severe weather in our summer outlook.
Now, potential X factor actually comes from the Great Lakes themselves. This particular year, we actually wound up seeing most of the lake ice melt by the late stages of February and early March. Since we're going in a bit warmer at the start of spring and summer, that could lead to a potentially warmer atmosphere in the Great Lakes with more moisture, thus potentially more energy available for storms. And we'll take you to Gratiot County, where just in the last literally minute, the Weather Service canceled the severe thunderstorm warning that was in effect for southern Gratiot County. But as you can see there, the storm is far from done itself. Let's put a storm track on it here for you. It's moving off toward the north and east at about 30 miles per hour. So that's going to put places like Edgewood right on the brink of this thing in the next 3 minutes. Brent, you've got about another 7 before this is right on top of you. St. Charles in about 17 minutes there. We head toward the Spalding area in about 35 minutes. Swan Creek 36, Bridgeport and Saginaw both a bit closer to the top of the hour. That storm had a history of producing 60-mile-per-hour winds in addition to quarter-size hail. You can almost make out this little hooking feature here kind of on the south side of the storm, which may indicate some rotation or some air flowing into the storm and possibly causing some manner of rotation in that area. Again, this is a tornado warning just issued a few moments ago from the National Weather Service, in effect until 7:45 p.m. As this radar indicated rotation within this storm, possibly capable of producing a tornado, continues off toward the northeast at about 30 miles per hour. This is where the radar indicated rotation comes into play here. Winds ahead of the storm moving in this general direction and right over Bullock Creek, kind of moving off toward the generally southeasterly direction, and possibly even another small pocket of rotation getting going in and around the Poseyville area just to the west of Freeland. So this is 2 zones here where we could realistically be seeing some kind of rotation or tornado trying to reach the ground. And even as I speak, things continuing to update here. They have now actually allowed the severe thunderstorm warning that was in effect for Midland County to expire. And as we zoom out here, we scan for more warnings. That appears to be the end of it for now. All warnings that were in effect have expired. So we're going to work our way to step aside here for you, get you back to regular programming. But I want to emphasize here, the situation not over. This
this is just round one of 2 waves of storms that will be coming in throughout the course of this evening and into tonight. You can see that much more prominent line across Lake Michigan on the left side of your screen there. That line, too, will have the potential to produce some severe weather similar to what we're seeing out there tonight. Damaging winds, the most likely issue that we face from storms this evening. But as we just saw there, you can't rule out some brief areas of rotation, so the possibility at least for brief spin-up tornadoes, also the potential for torrential rains as well as some small hail. So please stay weather aware this evening. We will, of course, be staying on top of everything here in the First Warn 5 Weather Center. We'll pass along any updates as they become available, any warnings, and we'll also break into programming if necessary. You essentially have 2 conflicting forces of wind working in this situation. You have the winds that are being produced by the storms themselves racing ahead with it, but out ahead of the storms providing the fuel is a fetch of wind coming in with the warmth and the humidity feeding into the storm. And sometimes when those winds meet in just the right fashion, it can cause, on these little notches along the squall line, these little brief spin-ups where you can, at least very briefly, produce a tornado. How brief? Well, here's what we're talking about. In the case of the West Branch tornado today, it was only on the ground for less than 2 minutes, and it didn't even travel 0.2 of a mile, but still an EF1 with maximum winds around 100 miles per hour. While we ducked the tornado, no reports of any damage or anything touching down, that same storm did absolutely drench the greater Midland area. Take a look at the radar estimated rainfall, and we have this bullseye right over the city of Midland, where 2 inches of rain is estimated to have fallen, and all of that coming in less than an hour's time. But it wasn't just Midland proper. It was also off to the south and west of town near the Homer area, just south of M20. Another bullseye closing in on the 2-inch mark over that same span of time. That's why we had a slew of reported flooded roadways in and around the Midland area. And this is why I said earlier some weather whiplash may be coming our way, because here's how warm we are right now, 79 degrees, a slew of 80s with that warm air mass on the other side of the front. But take a look at how sharp this cold frontal boundary is. You go from 79 ahead of it in Minneapolis to 41 just on the other side of it in Fargo, North Dakota. So when that crosses through tomorrow, it's going to knock our temperatures down big time, and it's also what's providing a little more energy for the overnight storms. But I want to draw your attention to the monthly total in the 3 days of August so far. Technically the 2, because we didn't get any rain today. So technically in the first 2 days of August in Saginaw alone, we picked up just over 1.5 inches of rain. That's more than we got in the entire month of July. It was only 1.3 last month. That brings our summertime total up to 4 3/4. Yesterday, the deficit for the summer stood at about 2.4 inches in Saginaw alone. We've knocked that down to 1.1. Here's what's going on in the big picture tonight. First Warn 5 Sky Tracker. We're kind of stuck in the middle of what's actually a classic setup for a developing nor'easter. We have the low pressure system that came up out of the Gulf yesterday, cutting in near Cincinnati tonight. That system is actually weakening and transferring its energy to a strengthening coastal low that's going to become a full-fledged nor'easter for folks in the Northeast. Why is that important to us? Well, it's going to take this swath of snow that's hanging on across Michigan tonight and start to break that up as the energy moves east of us overnight. But then we're going to get one more burst of snow as we head into tomorrow, as this smaller clipper system cuts in across the Minneapolis area and ducks across Michigan first thing tomorrow morning.
I mean, as if you needed one. Now you got a perfect excuse to have some pie tonight.
Exactly.
But we were having some fun with that today, trying to see if you could figure out this mathematical phrase. Do either of you have a guess?
I'm going to let you take that one, Bri.
No clue.
All right, well, the first one is the square root of -1, imaginary number, symbol I. Second one is 2 cubed, which is 8. The sigma there is the symbol for sum. And the last one there, we just talked about it, is pi. So there's your phrase.
Is it true?
Pie.
Did you eat some? Is it true?
It's not true for me yet today, but it will be before midnight.
Okay, good.
And I got one more thing for you as we head into tomorrow night and Saturday night. We're actually heading into the peak of the annual Perseid meteor shower. We're going to have very good visibility conditions from a weather standpoint tomorrow night and Sunday night. And at peak, we could be talking about as many as 60 to 70 meteors, that is, per hour. So if you can get to a dark location, it could definitely be worth a view.